Hey, Justin Chamness here, realestatewholesalersclub.com. And there's a lot of talk nowadays about list stacking and managing your data. And as a real estate wholesaler, it's very important to manage your data well because it's going to save you money on marketing costs. It's going to save you money on paying virtual assistant hours and so on and so forth. So managing your data and knowing what data belongs on what lists and which data is on more than one list and so on and so forth, huge in the real estate wholesaling business. I'm going to show you right now a little excerpt of a complete video that Burton Alicondo from Propstream and I did about this topic, and I pulled out the real meaty part. So I'm going to put the link to the full video in the description here if you want to check it out. Also a link to a 7-day free trial of Propstream. I highly recommend that you take advantage of that. It is a super awesome tool. It is the most comprehensive real estate tool that I have ever seen in my career. So let's jump right into this. This is Burton Alicondo from Propstream talking about how to do the list stacking and manage your list effectively using Propstream. All right, let's go, and I'll see you right after it's over.
So list stacking, the first one, taking two list types and putting it together. So let's say I'm in a market and I want to invest in pre-foreclosure. Justin, throw out a county for me and I'll use that county.
Escambia County, Florida.
Escambia County, Florida. There you go. All right. So we're in Escambia County, Florida, right? If we were going off this chart right now, what are my three highest categories? Would be these three right here. It would be the pre-foreclosure, auctions, and if this is a redemption state, Google redemption state. But what redemption state means is that when a property goes into foreclosure, when the bank takes possession, these states, they have to hold on to that property for an X amount of time. And that homeowner still has the ability to get it back from the bank, even after the auction, which is amazing. We don't have that in California. Once your auction is done and the bank owns it, the bank can literally sell it the next week. So in these redemption states, working on foreclosures could still be lucrative. But again, based on that chart, these are your most highest motivation. So let's go there, right? So we chose a list. Now we want to stack, right? We're looking for not just a pre-foreclosure, we want one at the highest level of motivation that we can find. So we have other categories here. So for example, I can take that pre-foreclosure and increase that motivation by looking for a pre-foreclosure with a bankruptcy. So to do that, I would click on pre-foreclosure, go into the filter and apply the simple stuff that I like, right? Like go into property characteristics, make sure it's a single family property.
Sure.
Go into the MLS, make sure it's off market, to traditional criteria. And then we would go into the ownership info, look for certain years of ownership or a type of owner. We can even go into the pre-foreclosure filters and look for certain recording date, certain opening bid amount. But here's the list stacking part. We have other categories like the lien, bankruptcy, and divorce status. So not only am I looking for a pre-foreclosure, but what I'm looking for is a pre-foreclosure that also has an active bankruptcy, right? So what we did is we went through the 564 pre-foreclosures, added that bankruptcy, which essentially is telling me, hey, you owe the bank money and you filed for bankruptcy, which means there's probably no income coming in right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a probability that you 16 individuals are more in a stressful situation than these other 540 odd numbers, right? Because the other 540, they are in pre-foreclosure, but they're not in a pre-foreclosure with no income coming in, right? So here, again, AKA is one level of list stacking, is taking two categories, and I took pre-foreclosure and the bankruptcy category, and I stacked it to find not just any pre-foreclosure, but the 16 that are in a high motivated category. So when you call, they're probably like, thank you so much for calling. I didn't even know we can sell it privately. I didn't know we can do a lease option. I didn't know we can do a sub 2. I didn't know you can buy my house in cash. A lot of the times people in pre-foreclosure don't know what you know. So take advantage of that, right? So that's list stacking. And again, it could have been a bankruptcy. Justin mentioned earlier, I thought that was clever. Instead of a bankruptcy, right, let's remove that. What about a pre-foreclosure that's off market, but it failed recently? So they decided to go with the agent instead of the investor, and it didn't sell. So it's a pre-foreclosure that has a failed listing, and it failed maybe in the last 90 days or so. So we have 3 properties in Escambia County, Florida right now that are currently in pre-foreclosure. And in the last 90 days, the agent had to tell them, sorry, we can't sell the property on market.
Wow.
So they're probably up against the fence like, man, what are my only options?
They got nowhere to turn.
Exactly. And so this is, again, AKA list stacking, taking one category and adding something to it. So either a bankruptcy or, as I did, a failed listing. But here's the thing. As much as list stacking is also important, before I get into the other form of list stacking, I want you guys to also remember this terminology, list suppression, okay? It's as important as list stacking. So let's say in this scenario, Justin is the #1 pre-foreclosure investor in his market, right, in Escambia. And I can never beat him, right? And he probably is. And so I can never beat him. Every time I call pre-foreclosure, these homeowners are like, oh, Justin already got me on contract. Really? Okay. So Justin is dominating the industry here. Does that mean I'm out of luck? No, it does not mean out of luck. I just have to be a little bit more cunning. So list stacking is important, but list suppression is equally as important. So if Justin is in the need help category and he's dominating the pre-foreclosure auction and foreclosure industry, then I need to edge him out. And remember, I said, people don't go from good to need help overnight. There's usually a smoke that's indicating a fire is about to start. And that's the uh-oh category. So let's talk about list suppression. So if I know that in Escambia County, Justin is marketing to all these pre-foreclosures, all these auctions, all these bank-owned properties, I need to edge them out.
Have you guys figured out how many different possible combinations there are?
No, we haven't. And we're still trying to figure out like what that is. And I'll explain why in a few moments, why the combination could be endless.
Yeah.
So because Justin's in the pre-foreclosure and I have to beat him out, remember, I know the uh-oh categories. I know that a lien, if not paid, will turn into pre-foreclosure. I know if that divorce is ugly and you guys don't start paying your payments, it's going to start going into pre-foreclosure. That bankruptcy can turn into pre-foreclosure. That failed listing can turn into pre-foreclosure, right? So while Justin's over there, I need to edge him out. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Escambia County, Florida, go into the filter. The first step I'm going to do, make sure I don't have a list selected yet, is go into the pre-foreclosure area and exclude all of those records from my results. I don't want to see them because Justin's already working on them, right? So remove all pre-foreclosures, auctions, and foreclosures from my results. So what I'm doing here is I'm literally blocking out this whole section. I'm not even working on it. Rather, now that I don't have pre-foreclosures and auctions in my list, I'm now going to focus on the uh-oh category. So let's look for that lien now. So now I can look for a lien. So there are 4,700 properties with a lien right now that are not yet in pre-foreclosure. And so my goal is I can work with these guys. And here, all I have to know is that, yeah, Justin's doing a great thing with pre-foreclosure. And yes, Justin and his team are able to close deals in 30 days because they're in a very dire situation. Fair enough. But I'm a patient guy. And I know in every selling industry, whether you're selling houses, cars, or video games, or makeup, jewelry, your clientele, 60% of them are all about follow-up. No one's going to sell their house on the first phone call. Sometimes it happens, but that's what we call the unicorn deals, right? In this industry, I would say 60 to 70%, 80%, if not, are through follow-up, where you're calling, introducing yourself, they say no, you're calling the next time, maybe offering them websites to help them with their situation, like how to resolve that lien, who to call to make payments on it. Third follow-up, they maybe thank you, but they still tell you it's still out of their hands. Fourth follow-up, hey, you know what, Burton, thanks for following up for the last 3 months. We're not able to handle the situation. Let's go ahead and go with that cash offer. So Justin's now scratching head, wondering, hey, why is Burton getting all these deals? Where is he getting these deals from? And that's because I'm edging him out. So I don't mind spending 6 months on these deals because Justin's not going to see him because they're never going to go into pre-foreclosure. And if they do go into pre-foreclosure, Justin and his team are going to call, and the owner is going to say, you know what, I'd rather speak with Burton. Who's Burton? Oh, he's been working with me for the past 6 months. And so that's, again, I'm turning the tables on these individuals by working ahead of time. So list suppression is as important. To remove the liens, the foreclosures, but look for liens is great. But you can also stack in the same area, right? So I'm looking for liens not in pre-foreclosure, but that doesn't mean I can't look for a lien with a failed listing, a lien with a bankruptcy. So I can do that just like we did earlier. I want a lien that is off market because it failed in the last 90 days. So think about that. There are 10 properties not in pre-foreclosure yet, but they have a lien and they try to sell it, which means that they're reacting to something. They're reacting to maybe that $10,000 lien that they can't pay off. Wow. So they thought, hey, let me just sell it to an agent, but that agent couldn't sell it. So what do you think the next step is going to be? Pre-foreclosure, but they're not there yet. So that's the important part about that. Okay, so I want you guys to focus on this. This is the list stacking. Now, before I get to the list automator and the other version of list stacking, what makes Propstream unique is the data and the ability to manipulate the data. And Justin, here's why I couldn't answer your question on like how many combinations we can make. I would be able to answer your question if we forced you to choose a list. We have 18 categories, right? So if we forced you to choose the list, then in theory, you can do the math 18 times 17 times 6. You can find out ultimately by multiplying every number what the ultimate combination could be. But that cannot be done because as you see here, we're not forcing you to choose a list. And this leads me to my point. In the last 8 years, I've worked with investors. I've come to understand one thing. Everybody's looking for the same thing. You know what that is? A problem. Love. Not a list, a problem. Okay. So whether you're a wholesaler, a fix and flipper, a lender, an agent, a contractor, you do general contracting. I mean, whatever it is, you're looking for a problem, right? Now, unfortunately, I think we were kind of clouded by the fact that a problem is a list. And that's not necessarily the case. Now, some of these problems, like our chart is showing, are very obvious problems, right? But some of these problems are so subtle, they're not on any of these categories. Let me show you why we didn't choose a list, right? So while Justin and team are doing pre-foreclosures and let's say liens and all the categories that you can possibly imagine.
There's some crazy, awesome categories too.
Exactly. Yeah. What I can do is I can come up with a whole different problem. So here's my 3 golden rules if you guys want to write it down. I've discovered that everybody is looking for 3 things, right? These are what I call the investment golden rules. The first rule, it's off market. 9 out of 10 times we're looking for off market properties. Now, granted, I know some of you guys are willing to look for on market properties. So you're that 1 out of 10, right? But 9 out of 10 of us are always looking for off market properties. So the first golden rule has always been on market. No, right? I don't care who you are, but most of us are looking for off-market properties. You know what the second golden rule is? Equity. Now, I say that with an asterisk. Most real estate strategies, wholesaling, fixing, flipping, lease options, subject to, well, not really lease options subject to, we'll take those back out, but most investment strategies require equity, right? If I'm an agent, I'd like for the homeowner to have equity so they don't have to bring money to the table when they sell their property. If I'm a wholesaler, I need equity. I need assignment fee. If I'm a fix and flipper, I need equity because when I buy that property and sell it, I need to make profit on that equity, right? Yeah. So most of the time, second golden rule, it's equity. Now, again, I say this with an asterisk because the more you know, the more you educate yourself on the creative seller finding stuff. One book I would recommend is the Bigger Pockets, the book on investing in real estate with no or little money. So if you have that, get it. But that book shows you or introduces you to a bunch of creator real estate strategy out there. But in that sense, if you do sub 2s and lease options, then you probably don't need equity. Rather, you'll use our loan to value ratio filter. But as you can see, the second criteria is it has to do with the equity, whether high or low. That's still the second rule, right? So first rule, off market. Second rule, I want 30% in equity or more. Or if I apply sub 2s, then I want an upside down property. I want something that's 110% to 100 to 110% on loan to value ratio, meaning these properties have negative equity. These would be sub 2 candidates, right?
What's the name of that book again, Burton?
It's called it's from Bigger Pockets.
We got shiny object syndrome, man. So
Brandon Turner. It's called The Book on Investing in Real Estate with No and Low Money Down.
Okay.
So it's not going to explain how to implement the strategy, but it will expose you to most of the strategies that are implemented in the real
That's
world.
cool.
So
okay,
that's definitely a book I would encourage you guys to do.
Great.
But as you see here, whether you're doing that creative seller financing stuff or you're doing the wholesale and fixing and flipping, equity is still the second rule, whether it's high or low. That way we can implement that certain strategy. But you know what the third golden rule is? Motivation.
Right.
Always going to be motivation. But this is where we got lost. What ended up happening is that after we applied our golden rules, our off market, and let's say 30% to 90% in equity, right? Or 100%. What ended up unfolding over the course of years is that we unfortunately got confused on what motivation is. I think what happened is we got kind of stagnant and we decided that motivation was a list, right? It was one of these guys. That's why I said, hey, based on motivation on list type, this is what it is. But I'm hesitant to say that because I've discovered and I've heard from investors like yourself that people will sell property that are not in this list. So let's have some fun. Let me give you an example. So I was talking to a realtor and she called her search the double listing search. I was like, what the heck is that? She's like, oh yeah, we'd find these properties and we would be able to list them twice in a year. I'm like, what? How are you doing that? She's like, oh, here's my category. I look for off-market properties with equity that are single family, that are 3 bedrooms with 1 bathroom max. That's it. And they're owned by individuals. That's her list. She didn't choose a vacant list. She didn't choose a lien list. She didn't choose a pre-fork. Her list was, I'm going to go hunt down everybody with 1 bathroom and 3 bedrooms. Because the problem here is 3 people are sharing 1 bathroom. I wouldn't want to do that. So the reason she called it the double listing search is so she would call the homeowners and say, hey, have you guys considered upgrading? And not everybody was going to say yeah, but some of them would say, yeah, we never thought about it. Well, I'm an agent. We can list your property for you. So hopefully they would agree to that and they would list their 3-bedroom and 1 bathroom property. She would then obviously, sell the property for them. But guess who she's selling the property to? Her investor buyers. So every time she called one of these homeowners and got them to sell a 3-1, she took that listing and went to one of her buyers and said, hey, I have a 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom property on market now.
Right. Add a second bathroom to it.
And what do you think they're going to do in 3 months after they rehab that property? Who do you think is going to list that rehab property for them?
The same realtor.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why she called it the double listing. And I was like, boom, that's just genius.
Oh yeah.
Genius. And that's why I couldn't answer Justin's question on, how many potential combinations can be made, is because remember, this industry is about solving problems, not solving a list. It's about solving a problem. And so you have to kind of look at our filters or anybody else's filters for that matter. So if you're going to take anything from me today, even if you're not using Propstream, is start looking at everybody's filters as how can I create a problem? How can I reverse engineer and create a problem? And I mentioned earlier, the reason why I want you to start looking that way is I've discovered in 8 years that our industry is a pendulum that swings left and right, right? In 2019, the most commonly sought lists were pre-foreclosures and auctions. March 2020, that list struggled because now you had people that are on furlough, right? So they don't have to pay, or their eviction, or I'm sorry, they couldn't get eviction. And not only that, their auctions were delayed. So if you had an auction in April of last year, it was pushed back to like October or November. Sometimes, in some markets, they're still being pushed back, right? So what ended up happening last year is everybody that was doing pre-foreclosures and auctions and bank owned were all of a sudden talking to people that weren't as motivated, right? They're saying no just a little bit longer, right? But we all understand there's always 2 sides to the coin, right? So in March 2020, when pre-foreclosures and auctions and bank owns got extended indirectly, benefited from that, they were saying no to you. But who's on the other side of the stick? You know who's on the other side of the stick? And I found out who it was because I saw a lender client of ours start searching for it. The people that were on the other side of the stick were the non-owner occupied properties, the rental properties with tenants. So it's non-owner occupied and it's occupied. And those properties were owned by individuals with mortgages, 1 or 2 mortgages. So what this lender was looking for, because he knew everybody in pre-foreclosure and auctions were going to say no now, he was looking for the people that were renting to them, right? So I want a property, a rental property that's occupied, owned by a person like Justin, myself, but that person is renting that property with a mortgage. Here's the problem with that. In 2019, this would not have been a motivated list. These are all passive income investors, right? You got a mortgage for $1,500, you're renting your property for $2,000, you're pocketing that $500 passive income. Great, I'm gonna leave you alone. But in March of 2020, when 40 million people filed for unemployment, that could have been your tenant. And if it was your tenant, and your tenant said, hey, I can't pay your rent on April 1st, and this homeowner's like, well, you're gonna get evicted. But then the federal government said, nope, you can't evict anybody. So now these 11,000 people for the last year have been biting their tooth and nail because they're hoping that the rent is going to get paid. Now, some of them have, till this very day, probably have been sitting for the last year without getting paid yet, right? So there's probably someone, I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying in this group of 11,000 people that are renting properties with a mortgage, there is one of their tenants that hasn't been paying rents for months. And I brought up President-elect Biden earlier because what was one of his executive orders? To extend evictions. So this is going to be a big list because of that, right? The evictions is going to, extending evictions is going to help the renter or the renters, but it's not going to help people that are renting with mortgages.
Right.
So this is why we decided a few years ago, we can't force you to choose a list anymore, because the moment you do, you're going to be limited. You're not going to find those individuals. Or if you do, you got to find the landlords that are renting with the mortgages that also have a lien, and that just limits you from 11,000 possibilities to 95, because you're looking for 95 that are also on a piece of paper.
Or the owner is out of state. That might be a good
That's
one.
a big one.
Yeah.
Right here. Out ownership, out of state. There you go. 3,900 properties renting.
Cow.
And the owners are in a different state with a mortgage. That's just I don't even want to fathom the anxiety that these guys are facing every month, hoping that rent gets the direct deposit or they get that check in the mail. Because if they don't, what do? Do you fly to Escambia, Florida and say, hey, where's my rent? No, because that means I'm now wasting an airplane ticket to get to Florida just for me to check up on my property and them say, oh, you're here. Yeah, I don't have the rent. So I just spent money to fly to you just for you to say no in my face. And another thing too, to note, I've been hearing some of these out-of-state owners are calling their tenants and the tenants have their phone numbers disconnected or they're not answering anymore.
Yeah.
So you have a property in a different state and your tenant's not answering your phone anymore.
Yeah.
And traveling right now is, you know what I mean? Especially with this pandemic.
Yeah.
So
that's motivation.
Big. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I want to, at the end of the day, hope you guys get anything out of this, is build problems. Go into a county. Wow. Yeah, go ahead and start with these categories, but start building problems. And eventually it gets fun. I mean, you can build problems on your own, or you can take some of these categories and build problems with it. Like I've been seeing people do senior owners as a list.
That's pretty new, right, Burton?
That's new. Yeah, very new. And we've been able to do that because we collect ownership info, tax exemption, senior citizen tax exemption. And we don't show it, but we do have mortgage data. So we know which properties have a reverse mortgage on them. So that's what this list is. But once you start with this list,
well, I wish I'd have had Propstream when I was in the insurance business working with the Medicare market, over 65 market, man. This would have been so handy.
Oh my God. And that's what I'm telling you, because we're real estate data, I've talked to insurance companies that use Propstream, contractors that use us, lenders that use us. But the ultimate idea is that, after talking to everybody, no one's looking for the same thing. No one's implementing the same strategy, but eerily, they're all looking for something similar, off market, some sort of equity, high or low, and motivation. And so that's my philosophy, is build problems. And then you can do things like, hey, I want a senior owner, not just as senior owner, but the problem today is that they're in a 2-story building going up and down, up and down, up and down, right? Like that could be tedious. So I'm looking to identify senior owners in a 2-story building.
Oh.
Or not only that, maybe a senior owner, like Justin mentioned, that's in a different state, because right now they're the highest risk due to this pandemic. Nobody's traveling. So to just call the owner and say, hey, your property off Pelham Road, what are you looking to do with that, John?
That looks like a deal right there.
It looks like it.
I mean, look at that crapper.
And it looks like it was on market, just sold recently. So it looks like someone bought it. Yeah, someone just bought it in cashless.
There you go.
Year,
it was a deal.
Yeah, it was a deal for somebody. Exactly.
You gotta get it.
With the ARV, most comps in the area about 90. So yeah, that's a pretty good deal. But as you can see, someone in July of last year sought that opportunity. They said, hey, you know what? Maybe we should look for out-of-state landlords or out-of-state senior owners.
Yeah.
And that individual was able to score it, 4 months after the pandemic started?
Yeah.
So this is building problems. And this is, again, list stacking, list suppression, and building your own problems. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Now let's get to...
All right, there it is, guys. Some real heavy gold nuggets. Go back, replay, rewatch, check it out, hit slow motion if you have to. Open up your second monitor with Propstream and this first monitor with that video, and then go in there and mimic in your market areas. Okay, imitate. Imitation is how you grow. All right, guys. So imitate those things right there that you just witnessed in your business, and you'll have the same type of results. All right, love you guys. I'll see you later. Check us out, realestatewholesalersclub.com. We're all about helping you get to that next deal. All right, bye-bye.
No more questions.